Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well again still this week and staying healthy and staying safe. Hopefully, this pandemic will be done soon and we can be meeting with each other again. In the meantime, I will continue to do these videos and I hope you enjoy them and get something out of them. Today is the third video lesson entitled "What Can We Learn From?" The first video we looked at Noah and his obedience to God. And the second video, we looked at Joseph, a bit through his life and his forgiveness to his brothers. And so this third one, we're going to look at the life of David. Now, there's a lot in the life of David that we can talk about. And so I'm just going to go a brief, background of David here, kind of who he was, who the Bible describes he was. And then we're going to focus on really one quality in this video that David had with God. So when we're introduced to David, one of the things we're told about him is that he is a man after God's own heart. And in the New Testament in Acts chapter 13, it mentions that. It talks about David. It mentions that he was a man after God's own heart. And that's a really amazing quality for David to have. I mean, that he's the only one in the Bible that gets that title, that description, and that's very incredible. And so when we hear something like that, we know that we can learn a lot from his life. So in 1 Samuel is where we get David's story, and in 1 Samuel 16:18, it says that David was brave, that he was a warrior. And it describes him as a fine-looking man. He was a good-looking guy. And it says that the Lord is with him. And again, that's a really nice way to be described, that the Lord was with him. And so we see through his life a lot of the ways that he served God and that God impacted his decisions. We're also told that he was the youngest of Jesse's sons. And when Samuel was looking for a king after Saul, David was not the kind of guy that most people would pick that this would be the king. Samuel went to Jesse and he thought it was going to be his older brother that was, big and strong. And those types of qualities that people looked for in what they thought a king needed to be. But David didn't quite fit that look at that time. And he was a very young man at the time as well. And so humanly speaking, he wasn't very, most likely the choice for a king. But David was described as a shepherd. That's what he was doing at the time. He was a shepherd that looked after his sheep intently. David really took his job seriously. And when you were a shepherd at that time, you needed to be very alert if any sheep was taken, and you needed to make sure that you could get it back. And it describes in detail through there how dedicated David was, and when a sheep was lost, what he was willing to do. So the quality that I want to look at for this video today about David is how David trusted God. He had so much trust in God in the things that David was doing throughout his life that he knew that he was going to be successful if he trusted God. So 1 Samuel 17, David is talking to Saul. And here we can see David's devotion and his trust in God. So 1 Samuel 17, starting in verse 32. David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go on and fight him." Saul replied, "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Here we get this story from David saying, as a shepherd, when his sheep were carried off, he would go and get the sheep back at whatever cost was necessary. So whether, it was, a lion or a bear came to carry off the sheep, David would go and get his sheep back. And he would go and kill the bear and kill the lion. And that's remarkable, that he would be willing to fight a lion or fight a bear to get a sheep back. He was that dedicated. And so he knew that God had watched over him as he did that he had trust in God when he was doing that. So when he was going to confront Goliath, he knew that God would be with him during that as well. He says there, the Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. So David had complete trust that God was with him when he fought the lion and the bear, and that God will be with him when he has to fight Goliath. So David shows a complete trust in God here when he goes up against someone bigger and stronger and more skilled in fighting. A little further on in 1 Samuel 17, it says, David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." So here David is speaking to Goliath, and he's saying, Goliath, you're coming at me with weapons, but I'm coming at you with God. That God is with me, and that I have trust that God's will be done. So, Goliath may have been bigger and stronger than David, but David knew that he was going to win. He had total confidence that he was going to be able to defeat Goliath because he had God, and he trusted that God would take care of him and lead him to victory. So we have here that David trusted God completely in life-altering circumstances. When his life was in danger by a lion and a bear and then ultimately Goliath, David knew that God would protect him. And so for us in our lives today, we need to have that same level of trust. We're not going to be fighting lions or bears or, giant soldiers. But we are going to face certain struggles in our life that are going to be very difficult for us. And we need to be able to have complete trust in God, that God is in control, that God is with us, and that he is helping us. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight." In Matthew chapter 6, it talks about us worrying and giving our trust to God. It says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you by worrying add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown to the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. This passage in Matthew really speaks to us right now, today, as we're going through this pandemic worldwide, that there's so much uncertainty right now. There's many people that are struggling financially and struggling, mentally to deal with all of this, and struggling physically. And we have so much to worry about right now that looking at this passage, we know that we just need to put complete trust in God. That God takes care of the birds of the air, and he clothes the grass, and he takes care of all of these things. That we need to understand that God will take care of us too. It may be scary to think about all the things that are happening in the world at this time, but if we put our complete trust in God and know that God is with us, we know that we are protected. We may not be protected from getting physically sick, but we know that we are spiritually strong. That as we strive for eternity with God, that we know we can be strong and solid in our faith, and we can have complete trust in God. Thank you for listening to this lesson about David. I hope it encourages you to know how much David has trusted God and how much we today need to trust God as well in our lives. Thank you for watching.